Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Daron Bartlett, and I love to talk about social issues that are happening around the world, but I keep my eye on African issues mostly. I can talk about any other issues happening. I don't really mind. And because it's what I do most of the times on radio and TV, for those of you who watch Urban TV and listen to XFM, though XFM is more of a radio, so I do the morning show there and we talk about issues, so many issues that happen. But I want to keep my eye on Zimbabwe this time. That caught my my attention. I had no particular intention to do anything this week, but my mind was still failing to comprehend about a bill that was passed in Zimbabwe. Now, for those of you who have heard, there's a bill called the Patriotic Bill that was passed in Zimbabwe by the ruling, I would say the majority of the MPs who went on the floor and said that they should pass such a law, and it has received a lot of criticism. I have tried to talk to some of my friends in Zimbabwe about this particular law, but none of them is appreciating it. They are not welcoming it. So, what does this law say? Now, the law talks about people who seek to damage the sovereignty of Zimbabwe as a country, but also talk about things like you have an intention to damage the reputation of the country. And there's this whole thing that the punishment you'll get if you are a citizen by registration, you would be deregistered, and if you're actually a citizen by a country like you actually born and bred in there, you will not be able to carry out some civic duties like voting for a certain period of time, or 5 years up to 15 years, and so on and so forth. And I kept on thinking of the things called patriotism. And I know that patriotism most of the times is about basically loving your country and, kind of promoting your country in a positive way. I imagined the situation that Zimbabwe is in. If you all know, it's one of the countries that has the worst inflation in the country, and they're going through so much. It's a country where I found so many currencies being traded, not only traded, but being used in the country. I found there the Botswana currency, I found the Zambian currency there, I found the South African rand. It has almost all the Southern African currencies working in that country. So definitely the people of Zimbabwe are not happy with how the economy has been going and how the whole political system has been moving on. You don't expect that to happen. I've seen nurses who have been planning to leave the country and go and work abroad. I have seen stories of people trying to, have so much money, you carry so much to gun by just a loaf of bread. It's not a country that you would be proud to be in, given the situation that it's in. But if you come from Zimbabwe, and then you definitely have to be proud of your country that you live in. Now, people who are desperate most of the times are definitely going to express their dissatisfaction on how the systems of the government are working. At some point, being in the opposition was almost as criminal as Shangarai, who died, tried to oppose the country and become a prime minister, and all those kind of things. A lot of things happen in Zimbabwe. So most of the times, whenever people are desperate, people want change, people are agitated by the things that are happening, especially when you have high levels of inflation and people are basically poor, they're definitely going to abuse the government. They will not love it. They are just going to be agitated by everything. Even the positive things that the government has done, they will not even listen to it. They will not even understand what it is. Now, when you give such people space to express themselves, they are definitely going to be unpatriotic. They are going to say quite a number of things about the government. Was it a necessary law? Maybe not. The timing of this law is too much questionable, since Zimbabwe as a country will be holding elections in August, I think around 23rd. They'll be holding that elections. Now, for you to have such a law come in place, still a bill though, so for it to come in place at the time when there are campaigns where you definitely expect people to express themselves negatively towards the government, of course there are people who will express themselves positively towards the government, but I'm talking about the opposition in this sense. And it's not that I support them. No, I never support political sides. It's not my thing. But I'm just thinking, like, in any political environment, there's people who are for and there's people who are against. Now, the people who are against will not find room to express themselves and, kind of expose what the government that is in power has done or has not done for them to win themselves a vote, because you're most likely going to end up in jail for quite a very long time, or you may lose your civic rights like voting. And if you're holding a position in office, maybe public office, you're going to have to vacate that office because you lose your job. Now, when you look around all these conditions that have been put around and put in this bill, they're quite harsh. I don't see how this is going to improve the social I mean the whole political environment. I don't see a leveled political environment, because of course the people who are for the government will always say good. Then in any political environment where there's an opposition never speaks anything good about the government. We all know this. I mean, it's too obvious. Anyone who doesn't like you has to speak ill about you, to campaign you to be the favorite for the people. Now, I honestly want to understand how people are going to be able to express themselves towards the people. Or should they all go around talking about good things about the government of Zimbabwe? Now, I know there used to be a law, I think it was called the US Logan Act or something like that in the US. I don't know whether it's this kind of the same thing that they're trying to copy for Zimbabwe. But to be honest, I think I have also come across countries, it's not only Zimbabwe, I think I've had or come across countries where they have high level of patriotism, which is actually enforced on them. Like, you have to be patriotic. And it has worked for them in a sense that people are not allowed to talk ill about the government. And as a matter of fact, you never hear anything wrong about these governments until you actually live there. But even when you go to those countries, I just don't want to mention them, but you can do your research and find out. But even when you're in those countries, like, people cannot even whisper about the country. I mean, when you sit down with the locals and just tell them, "Hi, so how do you find this government? I mean, how do you people live? How is the political system? How is the economic system? How do I go around this if I want this?" They cannot even mention the name of the president, because, I mean, it could lead you into problems. You could be jailed, or you even don't know who you're speaking to. Most of the times, it's like you could be speaking to a government spy. You're not very certain, so you could speak to a wrong person, and then you're picked up in the evening, and then you sleep in jail. No one ever sees you again. If you're lucky to be alive, you'll be in jail. If you're unlucky, you'll be dead. But outside, the world knows that this is a dream country to be in. That's what they know. So there's so many countries of those. You can research about them and find out. So I'm thinking, is this the same direction that Zimbabwe wants to take? It could work, it may not work. One, the timing is a little bit questionable since it's coming in the period of elections. But two, there are already people who are dissatisfied with the things that are happening. They don't feel a huge difference between Robert Mugabe and Emerson Mnangagwa. That name disturbs me a little bit, but you understand it. But Emerson, the president Emerson, people don't find a much difference between the two. They feel like, because they actually worked in the same government, where at some point he was exiled, and shortly after he was exiled, the government was overthrown of Robert Mugabe, and then he was brought back to lead the country. So it's just the same people who fell out, but they have the same DNA on how they rule the government, it's the same political party and all this kind of thing. So I feel like something needed to change about the government so that they can recover their economy and their glory that they had in the 80s and 90s. They want to see themselves come to a place where they can freely express themselves. It's one of the countries where they block internet whenever there are some political issues, so you don't get to hear about them. So if you already don't have enough freedom of speech for you to express yourself, and then you have a law that is a patriotic bill, if signed in law, it will become a problem. It's not interesting. I honestly can't even comprehend that such a situation. I know patriotism being preached in different countries, including Uganda, where I am. It's trying to enforce patriotism in the country by trying to preach the right things about the country. But patriotic law, I don't know. See.